Tonight, should Broken Hill stay or should they go? Councillors consider leaving the peak body of LGAs in New South Wales. And costing more than $500 million, the proposed new green hydrogen plant in Waiala gets tongues wagging across the globe.
From our 7 Spencer Gulf Studios, your nightly news with Madeline Kerr begins now.
Good evening, thanks for joining us. Broken Hill City Council is considering its position within the Local Government Association of New South Wales. A motion was put in to leave the peak body, and while it was voted against, the ultimatum is still very much there.
It was an ordinary meeting with some extraordinary discussion. Councillor Alan Chandler putting forward the motion to opt out. Most people thinking it was about saving council membership fees and travel costs, when in reality it was about respect, acknowledgement and doing more for regional New South Wales.
Look, it has so much potential, but at the moment they're pushing agendas that really just don't necessarily benefit regional New South Wales.
Local Government New South Wales is an independent organisation, the peak body, and the voice of local councils, with places like Broken Hill, the Blue Mountains and Orange just some of its members. But now the organisation has been warned. Do more for regional councils or we leave.
It's now Local Government New South Wales is on notice. Start looking after regional Australia, look after Broken Hill.
The President of Local Government New South Wales is Daria Turley, but she's also the former Mayor and Councillor. If Broken Hill City Council were to leave, she would no longer be President.
Daria, as the President, will have no choice but to have benefits from it. The motion tonight was quite clear. If we don't see benefits, come November, we won't be members.
Memberships cost $45,000. On top of that, there are other costs, including travelling to and from conferences. For regional areas like the Far West, the good doesn't seem to outweigh the bad.
The advantage, so-called advantage, is to be able to meet with ministers, which we can do any time we like. We don't have to be a member of anything to make an appointment. We can go over there the same time as the conference on and still speak to members.
Joshua Mercer, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Waiala's $593 million green hydrogen plant has caught eyes from across the globe, with many international companies vying to work on the new site. The state government revealing it has received proposals from 60 companies from all over the world through its market sounding process last month. Head of the Hydrogen Power SA project, Sam Crafter, says an analysis of the submissions has commenced and will continue over the coming days and weeks. The government has promised to cover the cost of developing the plant, which has several potential locations, including Point Lowly. Some shocking news from SA Health today. A woman in her 20s has sadly passed away after contracting COVID-19. With the symptoms of the virus so similar to those of a cold or a flu, now's not the time to be complacent. Here's Edward McCarroll.
This current wave of COVID-19, mixed in with those struck down by the flu, is dealing a blow to local workforces and families. Now well and truly into the state's third wave of coronavirus, 339 people are in hospital and there have been 3,957 new cases of COVID-19 reported in South Australia today. Sadly, SA Health has also been notified that 17 people who tested positive for COVID-19 between the 13th of April and the 27th of July have died. Shockingly, a woman aged in her 20s is amongst the state's latest COVID deaths. Taking a wider look, there are currently over 25,000 active cases in South Australia, with many of our regional centres continuing to feel the brunt of this wave. Port Pirie currently has 304 active COVID-19 cases. Port Augusta has 233, while Waiala has it the worst on the Spencer Gulf, with 336 cases. Port Lincoln with the lowest 77, and across the border in Broken Hill, they jumped above 500 active cases once again. Health experts reminding regional communities of the importance of maintaining hygiene standards throughout the period and encouraging residents to continue getting tested.
If you get a negative RAT, and you have symptoms, that doesn't necessarily mean that you might not have COVID. Please go and get that PCR.
The statistics delivered by SA Health today are a sobering reminder that coronavirus is still deadly, and we are not out of the woods just yet.
Still on COVID, the pandemic is continuing to affect us in ways we never thought possible. In recent months, sports stores across the country and here in the Spencer Gulf have been experiencing a football boot shortage. Annabelle Francis has the story.
We've all heard of the lettuce shortage, but have you heard of the football boot shortage?
My understanding is that the supply chain was cut. Primarily, most of the boots, 95% of the boots for the whole of the world, were made in Vietnam.
There's an all too familiar explanation. The pandemic severely impacting the number of workers in shoe factories. Suppliers in Vietnam also citing COVID strikes as a reason. It's left footy players across the country with a lack of choice when it comes to picking out new kicks. Retailers in Port Pirie taking things into their own hands.
We've had to try and source other models from other suppliers to try and just fill the void.
Popular brands such as Adidas, Nike and Asics are just some of the brands affected, with some models not being made in the first place. Intersport Port Pirie says it's been a frustrating time for everyone. But customers have been patient, despite not being spoiled for choice this football season.
We're starting to see that that's starting to flow through now quite well. So our stock levels are not in football because it's the end of the season, but across the rest of the business it's okay.
Annabelle Francis, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
Still to come tonight, bad bills, counterfeit notes circulating through parts of the Spencer Gulf, and the looming threat of foot and mouth disease grips farmers in the far west. Welcome back. A warning from SAPOL to be extra vigilant when paying cash at the moment, after fake $50 and $100 notes have reportedly been circulating around the Yorke Peninsula. Kadina police are investigating the counterfeit notes at various businesses in the YP, as well as a number of locations in Adelaide. The notes in question were reported to be passed around on Friday, July 22. Police recommend anyone receiving change should check the texture of the note, as well as the other built-in security features like the plastic window and the printing. To determine if the note is indeed a fake, it's best to compare it with a note that is known to be genuine. If you suspect you have a counterfeit note in your possession, please report it to police by calling 131 444. The New South Wales Government has mobilised a team of veterinarians and specialist biosecurity staff. It's to ensure that farmers are in the best position to manage a possible infiltration of foot and mouth disease.
Experts from the local land services will connect with farmers through a series of targeted workshops, webinars and visits to sale yards and field days. Staff are trained to identify the early signs of both foot and mouth and lumpy skin disease. Acting Premier and Minister for Regional New South Wales, Paul Toole, says that while the focus remains on keeping the diseases out of the state, it's crucial to be prepared for the worst case scenario.
We need to do everything to ensure that we keep our shores free of foot and mouth disease. And we know that if it got into this country, if it got into this state, it would have devastating impacts on the livestock industry.
Farmers across the country, from the Eyre Peninsula to here in Broken Hill, are on high alert and will remain that way for the foreseeable future.
It is on our doorstep in Indonesia, and we need to make sure that we continue to work with the Commonwealth. We need to continue to work with the livestock industry to ensure that Australia remains FMD free.
And while they are happy to work with the Commonwealth and thankful for the measures they have taken so far, the state government would like to see more measures added.
To ensure that shoes, clothing are decontaminated before they cross back into Australia. In that way, we can ensure that our communities and our nation is foot and mouth disease free.
You can find more information on foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease on the local land services website. Joshua Mercer, 7 Spencer Gulf News.
The cafe space on Waiala's foreshore is still sitting empty, but the City Council has extended the expression of interest process for operators into August. The council says businesses should consider moving into the new space to capitalise on the upcoming foreshore developments and large-scale tourism projects.
Beachfront space up for grabs. The Waiala Foreshore Cafe was once a hive of activity, but in recent months it looks more like a ghost town. It comes as the City Council continues to look for the right operator, now extending its timeframe to get the new business up and running.
Council is currently out to market looking for an operator to run the cafe pod. So we've extended the expression of interest period through to the 5th of August to look to find the right operator for that.
The previous beach cafe operator announced that they would be departing the site in April. With this, Council took the opportunity to upgrade the ageing building, bringing in temporary pod facilities in the hopes of securing another operator for a seamless transition. But now Smoky Uppercuts has left, leaving a valuable tourist thoroughfare without service.
Anyone who's got experience in running a cafe, kiosk, food and beverage service, we'd be keen to hear from.
4 businesses are said to have applied, but a new document is now being sent across the Eyre Peninsula to circulate more interest. Council now expecting more operators to get involved, now that they can tour the finished facility.
Anyone who's interested in the opportunity to come and visit the pod and see what it looks like before they put in their expression of interest.
Edward McCarroll, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Stay with us. After the break, 2 Eyre Peninsula fireys acknowledged for helping to save lives during one of Australia's darkest times. And Moonta's rich mining history immortalised further after the museum's latest preservation project. Welcome back. 2 Eyre Peninsula firefighters have been awarded for their service in the 2019-2020 bushfires. The giant blaze burnt more than 14 million hectares of land, leaving people with nothing but the shirts on their backs. However, these CFS fireys are humble as they come and aren't in it for the accolades.
The bushfires that rallied the nation together. Now those first responders who were on the ground are being awarded for their service.
The medal was awarded to us, to the volunteers, for our efforts in the 2019-20 fire season, whether it be in local fires or interstate deployments.
The Black Summer bushfires tore through townships across Australia, with a damage bill of upwards of $88 billion. Here in Port Lincoln, it was the Duck Ponds fire.
Obviously for Port Lincoln, the major one that everybody's going to remember is the Duck Ponds fire, which started up on a total fireban day. And pushed into the outskirts of the town very, very quickly.
2 years on and over 2,000 CFS members will receive the National Emergency Medal, with 79 recipients hailing from Region 6 alone. Although grateful to have been awarded, it isn't the silverware that motivates them.
The medal's great, that's for sure, but it's things like getting these notes. These were put in my lunch packs whilst in New South Wales.
If you ask any volunteer, and I'm exactly the same, we do it to help the community. It's part of it, living in a rural community for us.
Region 6 also deployed strike teams to assist in Kangaroo Island, but it's the countless hours that go into preparation keeping them ready.
It's nice to be recognised because, whilst you see fireys go out in their trucks when the smoke's going in the air, there's many, many hours of work that goes on behind the scenes.
CFS also taking the time to encourage people to get their bushfire safety plans in check ahead of the next season. Henry Millick, 7 Spencer Golf News.
The Yorke Peninsula's rich history just got even richer. A unique wooden grave marker at Moonta Cemetery has been preserved to go on display at the museum. Dating back hundreds of years, the marker is extremely rare, with only one other of its kind in South Australia.
If we don't learn from our history, we're condemned to repeat it.
History is real, and we're the better for it. If we're lucky.
The Copper Coast Council recently became concerned about how much a wooden grave marker from the mid-1800s was deteriorating at the Moonta Cemetery. To say the marker is unique is an understatement. It's one of just 2 wooden grave markers to have survived in South Australia.
We asked the family about whether they could do anything. They then handed over the grave marker and the grave to the council with their ownership.
Council was fortunate enough to receive a $16,000 grant to preserve and replicate the wooden grave marker before it was too late.
We opted to actually use hue and pine, so I used new hue and pine, so hopefully that'll last a lot better in the ground.
The original wooden grave marker is now available for viewing at the Moonta Mines Museum.
I think people who are interested in heritage would be very keen to see what the grave markers would have been for their ancestors.
While you're in Moonta, be sure to check out all the historical sites. Annabelle Francis, 7 Spencer Golf News.
Stay with us after the break. Salmon and sharks, what's biting and where in this week's Fish and Tips. We'll have the weather details with Alex Sykes. Welcome back. It's time for Thursday Fish and Tips. Every week we bring you the latest from our fishing experts with what's biting in the Spencer Gulf.
Hi, Waiala's fishing tips this week. Again, the King George whiting continued to run right across Waiala. Some boats have missed out, but the ones that have been moving around certainly have been getting the bag limits. The best areas to target have been just out the front of South's Football Club or Cudmore Terrace, a little bit further south down towards Cowlard's Landing, and those for willing to venture further down south, down towards Menini, there's been some really good fish holding up down there as well. Also, the Eastern Shoal Grounds, another hot spot to try. There has been a few squid coming in from the Mount Young grounds. Land-based around Waiala, there has been a few silver whiting coming in from the local foreshore. The local jetty holding a few squid just on sunset and a few garfish late into the night. And there has been some nice squid also caught just on the left-hand side of the Point Lowly boat ramp.
G'day and welcome to Fishing Tips in Port Lincoln. We'll start over at Coffin Bay, out around the Farm Beach grounds. There have been some whiting, some tommies and a few good sized squid, but the whiting were a little bit slower last weekend with the Dodge tides, but hopefully they pick up again this week. Out wide of Sir Isaac's, there's been some nice school sharks caught on the reefs again out that way. And within the bay system there has been some salmon trout, especially around the racks and also around some of the headlands within the bay system. Back here in Port Lincoln, the squid have been pretty quiet over the past week, unfortunately. But the best reports of whiting we've heard have been from down the passage and also some nice fish out at the group out from Tumby Bay. Port Lincoln's south coast has schools of salmon still, and apparently there's a dead whale down that way which is bringing in a few bronze whalers, so there's a few sharks down that way as well. Well, that's all for this week. We'll see you again with more tips next week.
I hope that whale is sorted out soon. Time now to take a look at what's happening in the weather with Alex Sykes. Alex, Port Augusta was in the minuses this morning.
According to the Weather Bureau's Feels Like Gauge, yes, Maddie. From 10:30 last night until 8 this morning, it felt as low as -4 degrees. The official reading was -0.3 at 7:30. The Jewel of the North warming up to 20 degrees in the mid-afternoon, elsewhere 19 degrees in Waiala. Broken Hill reached 17.6 degrees around 7 p.m, rounded up to 18 on your screen. Looking more broadly at today's weather map, Woodna and Port Pirie also reached 19 degrees today, 17 in Port Lincoln with some rain falling overnight. Taking a look at the satellite image now, a weak trough over the south will dissipate this evening. A high pressure system over the east of South Australia tomorrow morning will move eastwards to be centred near the New South Wales coast on Saturday. A cold front will move into the far west of the state later Saturday, then over remaining parts on Sunday. A series of more vigorous fronts will move across mid to late next week. Moving on to tomorrow's weather outlook now, and we'll start with the Gulf waters. East to northeasterly winds 10 to 20 knots, seas around a metre, and south to southwesterly swell between 1 and 2 metres. Between 7 and 17 degrees in Port Lincoln on Friday, partly cloudy and set to reach a top of 19 in Cleve. Woodner pulling out a top of 21 degrees to end the working week. Partly cloudy conditions on Waiala 19 tomorrow, down to 2 degrees in Port Augusta tonight, heading for a top of 21 degrees tomorrow. Kadina will be partly cloudy and 16 degrees. Another partly cloudy day in Port Pirie tomorrow, 19 degrees. Clare and Broken Hill heading for a moderate winter's day, 15 degrees. Taking a look further through the week now, cloudy and rainy across the Spencer Gulf on Saturday. Port Lincoln can expect some showers, 16 degrees. Drizzly in Woodner and Waiala, 19 degrees. 17 over the border in Broken Hill. No rain just yet. I spoke too soon. There will be some rain in the Silver City on Sunday, 17 degrees. Possible showers around Port Pirie, Port Lincoln and Port Augusta. 15 degrees in Kadina and Adelaide. 19 and partly cloudy up in Cooper Pedy. And finally, taking a look at Monday's outlook, and would you look at that, sunshine is just about everywhere. 18 in Port Augusta, 17 in Broken Hill, Port Pirie, Waiala and Port Lincoln. Slightly cooler in Kadina, 15 degrees. Very happy with that, Maddie. Maybe Mondays aren't so bad after all. And that's all the weather from me for tonight. It's back to you.
Thanks for that, Alex. And that's the local news this Thursday. I'm Madeline Kerr. Thanks for joining us. I'll have updates a little later, but until then, enjoy your evening. Good night.